y'all. My name is Jasmine Jones. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and you are now watching Black Girl Therapists in the Wild. And this is a little series I like to call Therapist Sips and Reviews. Today we are reviewing Set It Off, 1996. I think I was 9, yes. And we are sipping on a healthy smoothie because I still have work to do this evening. I can't drink. I've been trying the moon juices, those like herbal powders that you put in smoothies and stuff, and I can tell you, they do something because I feel calmer, less stressed out. This is not, a plug. I'm just saying that it feels like it does something, but if one day they wanted to sponsor me, that would be a wonderful thing. Anyways. I was sitting and thinking why I didn't want to do this movie. And I was just like, it's because Cleo dies at the end. And then I watched the movie through and I was like, you know what? All these women needed was just a little bit more information about careers, education, opportunities that they had for themselves, but they couldn't because, racism, systematic racism, and lack of opportunities and lack of access to things. And I was just like, just more and more pissed off. Like, okay, so let's start into the movie. So we have Jada Pinkett Smith. She plays Stoney. We have Queen Latifah. She plays Cleo. We have Vivica Fox. She plays Frankie. And then we have Kimberly Elise. She plays T-Shawn. And there are these four friends. Because I started off with counting with my thumb. I was like, what? 4 friends that have been friends since childhood, grew up in the same neighborhood. It looks like they're in South LA or something. And we start off the movie with Frankie. She works at a bank, and one of her homeboys from the neighborhood, or somebody that she knows from the neighborhood, I wouldn't call them her homeboys, is robbing the bank. They rob the bank. The dude that she knows gets shot, and they fire Frankie because, they think that she's in collaboration with these people because, she knew the dude. And so I guess she told them that she knew him because I always wonder, like, well, how did they know that she knew this man? And so she's pissed off. Her homegirls work for a janitor company, and so she has to start working with them. And, in the next scene, we meet Stoney and her brother, and we meet Cleo. And I think her girlfriend Ursula is there too at this graduation party. It's 70s theme for her brother Steve. And Steven, whatever, is supposedly supposed to be going to UCLA. And he tells Stoney that he didn't get a scholarship. So he tells her that he can't go because he didn't get a scholarship. So Stoney says she's going to figure it out. So one day while she's hanging out with the girls, all together, as we do, in some random parking lot with all the other neighborhood folks drinking and smoking whilst hanging out of the car, because that's how they partied in the 90s. Yes. And they're talking, and this guy that owns a car lot walks up. It's old guy, and he's been after Stoney for a minute. He wants to have sex with her. She's asking him. He offered her a job at his car lot, and then she turned him down before. So now she's gonna ask him if she can take the job, but she also needs an advance because she needs the money to help her brother with college and all this other shit. He only will give the advance if she has sex with him. He's not going to write a check until she does. So she basically has to put herself in a position where she feels raped, in order to get this money for her brother. Before this dude walks up, Frankie's still pissed off about, getting fired from the bank. Cleo. I think Cleo brings up, we should rob a bank, and then you'd have money for your brother. Like dude that robbed the bank, they got $20,000, and you could get enough money for your brother to go to college. And then I'm just like, $20,000 is not gonna do much for 4 years at UCLA with no scholarships. But go ahead with your bad selves, especially split amongst 4 people. But whatever. So she goes, she has sex with dude, she feels raped afterwards, she washes herself, she's traumatized, she didn't want to do that. She felt she had to for her brother. She's been raising him since he was a child. Their parents died. And so she's been raised, so she's lost her parents already. So this is the initial loss that Stoney's experiencing before all the other shit goes down. So Stevie, Stoney's brother, is going to the dude that robbed the bank house because he knows him. He's in the neighborhood and all this other stuff. The cop is also, during the course of this movie, the cops are getting closer and closer to figuring out who killed or who robbed the bank. And so the cops are watching the video from the bank robbery and they see this AP cut into the back of dude's head. And it stands for Acorn Projects, but the cops don't know that. So Stevie is at the dude's house. He's like, oh, that AP's cool on your head. And da-da-da-da. And so, he had, before he left, he told Stoney that he hadn't gotten to UCLA. He had lied to her. And Stoney freaks out because, she had to damn near get raped to get him a little bit of change for UCLA. I was probably like $5,000, some shit like that. And so, he doesn't know this, though. He's just like, well, maybe going to college is just not for me, and walks out the house. And Stoney, of course, is re-traumatized because she basically didn't have to do that, and she did. And so he's at dude's house, and he asked dude's girlfriend to cut the AP on the back of his head, or they suggested or offered or whatever, or he wanted to. I don't know. So he gets the AP cut on the back of his head, and they give him a bottle of champagne because they think he's going to UCLA and all this other stuff. And so he's leaving the house with a bottle of champagne tucked into his jacket. The police think he's old dude because he got the AP on the back of his head, and they shoot the shit out of him because he gets down on the ground like they tell him to, but he doesn't want to lay on the bottle of champagne and crush it under him, so he's removing it, and they think he has a gun. They all shoot him. The white cop is like, I have no empathy for this man. He shot this man without even knowing if it was a gun or not, without even knowing if it was the right person or not, or whatever. And, Stoney shows up on the scene with the other girls, and she about to damn near kill this cop because, this is the same cop that, took, got Frankie fired and all this other stuff. And basically, because Frankie knew this guy, he's been trying to find out more about Frankie and people that she knows because they think she's involved. So they're still on her without her really knowing it. And so Stoney is just freaking out, sad. Throughout this whole point, Cleo and Frankie have been trying to talk the girls into robbing a bank. Let's rob a bank. Let's do this. Let's rob a bank. Stoney hasn't wanted to, but after this, she goes through grief over her brother. And she decides to rob a bank. So they rob a bank. They start off with this little bank. I think it's savings and loans or something. And she robs it. They all rob it with these ugly ass wigs on and things like that. And they take the money, and it's like, how much was it? I think it was like $12,000, and they each got $3,000, and they were really excited about the $3,000 that they had, and talking like they were gonna move out with this $3,000 and stuff like that. And I was just like, it's $3,000 each, like it's not. But anyways, Cleo ends up spending all her money on hydraulics for this car she's been fixing up since high school, lingerie for her girlfriend Ursula does not speak to anybody in this group. She does not say shit to anybody. I just feel the type of way about that. Like, what's wrong with Ursula? She literally, I don't think she speaks through the whole movie except for I think she spoke when she was alone with Cleo. Whatever. I just thought that was weird. The whole time she doesn't barely say anything to the girls, but they try to be nice to her. They try, because why not? So anyways, what happens next is they're still working at the janitor job. So they went back to working at the janitor job just to appear normal. The cops are looking at the tape, and the white cop feels like this is the one of the women is Stoney. He recognizes her. I mean, it's hard not to recognize her. Like, her facial, like, I just feel like nobody watches true crime. Like, these cops are going to keep going after you and keep going after you until... Especially if you're like black or whatever, and you're like fucking with the white man shit, like their banks and their money and stuff, they're just gonna keep going out till they find you. And also, I just feel like this has a lot to do with a lack of resources. Like, at one scene, they're sitting on the roof smoking weed, looking out at the refinery across the street, and talking about how it's $15 an hour.
Before they started laying people off, they was paying folks $15 an hour at that place.
Man, that's good money.
Nigga, for $15 an hour, I'll be old 4-ply radio. What I gotta do, sir ass motherfucker? You had to pull me off that damn machine. Yeah.
How they pay $15 an hour before they started laying people off, and that would have been good money for all of them and shit like that. And it's just like, today it's kind of like it's better because we have like Google and we have Instagram, we have memes that will show us different steps that we could take. We have like the internet and more ways to find out information. It's like in the 90s there was no internet. It was like you were lucky if you got a really good teacher that wanted to help guide you through your schooling and give you ideas about what your career path was. Like, these women had no hope. They grew up in an environment where they had no hope. And so, for example, like Stoney's casing out another bank that they want to rob, and it's the big bank downtown. And she runs into Blair Underwood, his beautiful, beautiful self. He is gorgeous and magnificent and wonderful, and I just feel all types of ways that this young, beautiful Blair Underwood was in this movie. But yeah, so she meets him, and he's trying to like uplift her and shit like that. So when they go on dates, he talks about like, what do you want to do 5 years from now? And she has no idea. She just is in survival mode constantly. And it's kind of like, that's what you are in when you are in constant trauma. You have no chance to form PTSD. You're always in acute stress mode, not knowing what's going to happen next. So just living in the moment and not planning ahead for shit, because there's nothing to stop and tell you that there is a future, and so these women are in this situation with no resources, no support, nothing outside of their, hood to kind of help them. Like, Stoney's never been out of Los Angeles. Keith, Blair Underwood's character Keith, is trying to tell her like, oh, I've been here and there and you've never been outside of Los Angeles. He's trying to like help her by informing her about shit and like, complimenting her and boosting her up and giving her information about shit. And she's just like, she has this tough exterior, but it starts to open her up a little bit to the idea that there's more out there than what she sees in her hood. And so I think she even tries to tell the other girls that like, there's more out here than what we have in this neighborhood. And, don't you ever think of the future? Because she doesn't want to rob the bank. She tells them, like, I don't want to feel like I have to do this, And so, they robbed the bank. Tian didn't make it into the bank, the first bank they robbed. She was standing outside. She's been scared this whole time. She's a really shy character and stuff like that has trouble speaking up and things like that. And she has a son. I feel like she should have been the one to live at the end, but she's not a character that's as fast a thinker as Stoney is. She's anxious and worried all the time, so she doesn't take the time to think through things. So it doesn't mean she's dumb or anything. It just means that, she has anxiety. She's like a scared little mouse. And that's how being in constant survival mode can present as well. Just being anxious and scared all the time. So I just felt bad for her. Like, the way they robbed these banks, it was very messy. Like they robbed the second bank and there was information the second time, but the first time they fumbled it. The second time they fumbled it too, because it was like there were police outside and there was this homeless person. And the homeless person was, belligerent and all this other stuff. And so they called the cops. So they couldn't go out the front because their getaway car was in the front. And so Cleo goes into the parking garage and gets in this SUV and drives it through the bank and drives it out the window, and they get away. And, it was just kind of like, all of this is messy. And it just feels like it's not messy in the way that, what the fuck are they doing? There's other options. They know better. It's messy in the way that they don't know better. Like, this kind of chaos to become successful and become something is all they know, and they don't have any other examples. I mean, yeah, like in the 90s we could watch TV and shit like that and see examples of excuse me, rich, famous people and all this other stuff, but it's like to process to get there, the dedication to get there, the working hard to get there is a hard thing to conceptualize when you're just trying to survive day by day. So it was just like, I just felt really bad for all of them. I just like, this movie is fucking depressing. I just feel really bad for all of them. They're like lacking resources, lacking information, lacking a support system, and they're doing this reckless ass shit thinking that they're gonna get rich. Like, they end up getting like 295,000 from the second bank, and or 295,000 and counting. That's what she said. So I don't know how much it ended up being. Probably a little over 300,000. And they hide it in the fucking building that they've been cleaning for this asshole guy named Luther. That's their supervisor. He's a fucking asshole. And it's like they hide it in a vent in the building that they're cleaning. I guess so the police won't find it or some shit. I mean, and their plan is that in the next 3 days they're gonna take that money and they're all gonna move out and they're gonna split it because it's $75,000 each, and they're gonna live their life in the suburbs or somewhere nice or whatever and things like that. And it's just like the thought process here is like, yeah, you can sit back and you can go, but that's dumb. That's only $75,000. What are they gonna do when it runs out? You can put a down payment on a house with it, but how are you gonna pay the mortgage to the house? You're not gonna buy a whole house for $75,000. I mean, not in America. And so I'm just like, where is the thought? And I'm just like, there was no education here. It's not that they couldn't know. It's just that the information hasn't been offered to the point where you would want to look and research for this stuff. You know, when you're worried about surviving, you're not worried about looking and researching and understanding that this quick money is not going to last long if you don't know how to budget, if you don't know how to invest, if you don't know how to build a business. And so it's just kind of like 75,000 isn't a lot. Like, they probably could have got an apartment, lived for a little bit. It's like, you know, maybe they could have went to school, you know, got an apartment, went to school, you know, did stuff. And it's just like, it's just so reckless to get money that way where you could die. But if that's all they know is living and dying, like Stoney's parents died, Stoney's brother died, death is nothing to these women. Death is nothing. So that is a casualty of getting money for a lot of people in areas where there are no resources. And it just made me feel a type of way. This whole movie just makes me feel depressed. Just like, I don't want my people to be like this. I want my people to know everything and have all the opportunities and have all the options to be able to like do whatever the fuck they want to do. Like, yeah, there's trauma here, there's all this stuff, but it's like a lot of people are traumatized and shit like that. It's about having the resources to know that you can get out. Like how therapy is like a trending topic now, even in poor areas because of social media. And it's like, just to know that there's a thing called therapy means that everybody can look it up eventually and figure it the fuck out. But it's like, in the night, you can't do that in the 90s. I mean, who's going to the library picking up a book about therapy? Who's reading newspapers like that on a regular basis as a young teenager or young adult in the 90s? Like, nobody was doing that. There was no, like, way to access this shit. That's how black people were easily maneuvered into poverty for so fucking long. It's because there was no way to access this shit, like, without having to try. You know, because if you're worried about living every day and surviving, you're not going to try to look up other ways to live and survive and make money. Yeah, you got the outliers that ended up getting out the hood and figuring it the fuck out. And I'm talking about those even outside of rappers and sports players, because those are the other two avenues where you can make quick money fast if you have enough talent. But if you don't have talent and, you know, in any field like that, then it's kind of like, I'm talking about the ones that got out of there and were doctors and lawyers. And that's why for so long we haven't had any black doctors that are black therapists or all this stuff, because we didn't have the access. So I'm just thinking how if we didn't have technology, we would still be in that same fucking shit. because there's no access to shit. You know, and even when we try to get together and give ourselves the access, like Black Wall Street, basically. You know, even when we tried to get together and grow in ourselves and give each other this information and things like that, like it just didn't, like they came and took it from us. Anytime we tried to grow, they came and took it from us. And then they took it from us so much, like civil rights movement, the Tulsa, there you go. I'm like Tulsa, the Tulsa riots, killing off all the Black Panthers, putting crack in the community to the point where they don't have no shame about it. There's a whole movie about how the CIA put crack cocaine in the Black community, and it's a very good movie, and it's just like there's no shame amongst these people. So it's like now we have the access. Now we have the resources. Like these women don't have that, and it's just fucking sad, and I hate this movie because I don't want to be that way. I don't want nobody to have to live like this. So they just feel like this is the way it has to be. Like this isn't like a mess because like this isn't the Three Stooges or some shit. This is like they have no access and this is how their life has been, and this is the only way they see they can go forward. Like even when Luther steals their money and they go get Luther, they try to get their money back. Luther keeps saying he doesn't know where the money is. T-Shawn shoots Luther because Luther pulls a gun on Cleo. And so Luther's dead. And, they're just freaking out because Cleo gets called into the police station for a lineup. Luther was with I think a prostitute or something. And Cleo took the prostitute's ID and was like, if you snitch on us, we know where you live. And left. And so when Cleo gets pulled into the lineup, because the cops have been watching them the whole time, this cop is just sniffing around Stoney in particular because he recognized her from that video, but the whole group of women. And so Cleo is called in for a lineup. She does this thing where she pats her chest where her pocket is on her button up and say to whoever the witness is that I know that you're in there and I know who you are and I got your information. So the witness says she doesn't recognize anybody, and the cops try to make her and force her, but the witness is like, no, I don't recognize anybody. So Cleo freaks the fuck out. All the girls freak the fuck out. Luther's dead. The cops are trailing them, and then in their anxiety and panic, they think of the dumbest shit ever. They think, well, let's rob another bank. This will be our biggest heist. We're going to rob the bank downtown where Stoney's boo is at, and we're going to take all the money, and then we're going to just disappear, and they can't, and then leave and shit like that, because Stevie has to go to court the next day. And I forgot to say, so they were at work, and Stevie's son, she couldn't afford a babysitter, so he drank like a bottle of bleach or some shit, and this county worker came and basically took her son and said it was neglect. And they don't do that. No, you don't get your children taken that easily. Like, I mean, think of the little kids that have been tortured, and social workers have come over to their house over and over again, and they don't take the children. You don't get their kids taken that easily because your child poisoned himself with a bottle of bleach because he could have drank that shit at home. No, they don't do that. So, because they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay to put these kids in foster care. What they would have probably done is given her resources for free babysitting, and then see if she uses the resources and come back and check in on her periodically to make sure that she has been using these resources that they've given her for babysitting. And if she hasn't, then, there's probably another tier they go up, and a tier and they go up until eventually, if it gets too intense where there's like severe neglect, there has to be like severe neglect. If this is not severe neglect, this is not a history of her doing fuck shit with her kid. They don't take your kids like this. They were just being dramatic. Anyway, so Stoney got her kid taken away, and they said that basically she has to go to court, pay some fees, and prove that she's, can afford to take care of him and get him a babysitter when she's at work. So Stoney has to go to court the next day, and they're all like, we'll rob the bank, and then Stoney will go to court and get her kid, and then we'll all leave. Like, the cops are following you. So this part I would say is dumb. The cops are following you. But it's like at the same, it's half and half. It's like dumb, but at the same time, it's also about, lack of access. So if I can't calmly, if my whole life is chaos, then that's how I'm going to think through everything that happens that may be, a problem for me, chaotically. So it kind of fits, but at the same time, it's stupid. It's like if the cops are tailing you and following you around, like you have to know they are at this point. Why the fuck would you plan another heist at the biggest bank downtown? Try to rob the bank like the cops aren't going to see you. So the cops end up seeing them having a shootout at the bank. T-Shawn gets shot. She dies in the back of the car. They get away in a car, in the car that they stole. And, something else that bothers me that Cleo does is that when she steals a car for the bank robbery and leaves. But before she leaves off with the car that she's stealing, she throws the CDs out the window because she doesn't like the music that's in the car. So back in the 90s, we had CDs and cassette tapes. We didn't have Bluetooth radio. So, she throws the shit out the window until she finds a CD that she likes. And it's basically just leaving evidence every single time she does that. And I just feel like it's stupid, but at the same time, it's that same kind of childlike thinking of, we think in the moment. There you go. So thinking in the moment instead of thinking ahead, because our life is about thinking in the moment and not thinking ahead. So yeah. They leave. They try to trade the cars back. The helicopter comes and sees them. T-Shawn dies in the back of the SUV. They leave her there. They start being chased by the helicopters, the police and stuff. They get to a tunnel. The helicopters block both sides of the tunnel. So Cleo tells Frankie and Stoney to get out of the car and stand up against the wall. She sacrifices herself and drives out the tunnel and rams into the police cars, gets out the car, starts shooting, and they shoot her full of bullets. And this is horrible. She didn't deserve that shit. It's fine. She didn't deserve that. I don't care. I don't like it. Okay? It's not like Training Day. That nigga was evil. And, and just a moment of, for Queen Latifah, because we don't give her roses. That woman can act Broadway, can act horror, can act comedy, can act romance, can do a talk show. Bitch, who else? Who else can do that? Okay? Who else? Tell me who. We never give her roses. Yes, some of her comedy and horror movies, weren't the best. But she extended herself and she played those parts and they were fun to watch. Like that one where she had cancer and she only had such and such time to live, and she met LL Cool J in the mountains and they got together and it was a beautiful thing and all that stuff. And then she found out she had cancer, so she didn't have cancer, so they could stay together. Something about Last Holiday. There you go. So, just give her a moment. She deserves her roses. And anyways, I'm sober. I'm completely sober. Anyways, so Frankie ends up running off. Stoney runs off and sees like a Greyhound. I think it's going to Mexico. She gets on the Greyhound. She puts a sombrero on her head from one of the tourists and tries to hide herself on the Greyhound. And as the Greyhound is leaving, Frankie's standing in the middle of the street. The cop comes up to her and tries to get her to, put the bag down and and calm down, because he feels bad. Because he feels bad that everybody's dead off of him, basically. So, like, if he hadn't got Frankie fired, but I know Frankie could have made other choices, but you know what? He shouldn't have did what he did. Fuck him. Anyway. Stoney's on the bus and the bus is going by. Frankie's standing in the street with the cops. The cop's like, no, don't shoot. Nobody shoot. And he walks up to Frankie and he tells her, come on, it's over. Just put the gun down. She pulls the gun out, then puts it up against his neck as she should. Don't care. Fuck him. And, she goes, what's the procedure when you have a gun to your head? Because when he got her fired, he kept asking her over and over again, what's the procedure when the bank's being robbed? And she tells him like what the procedure is, but it's like, what the fuck? She can't be in shock when this man, her childhood friend or whatever from her neighborhood, shoots some old woman in the head in front of her. As black women, we can't be in shock. We have to remember to press this button or whatever the fuck he's talking about. We can't experience any kind of trauma because we're robots. Magical robots that don't have any emotions and things like that. So I understand her anger when she pulled that gun on his head and said, what's the procedure when you have a gun to your head? And so she's like, fuck this, turns around and runs, and they shoot her in the back as she's running away. So I'm confused as to why they shot her, because she was running away. She was running away. She was running away. They shot her in the back. I kept forgetting how Frankie died. I only remember Cleo, and I knew that Jada Pinkett Smith got away. That's fucked up. She was running away. So even just like a shot to the leg, no, we shot her in the back. She's dead. And Stoney gets to go to Mexico. She has a full breakdown in some hotel room, cuts off all her hair. That's a sign of grief in a lot of cultures, is cutting of your hair. I think like some Native American tribes do it too. Like they cut their hair as a sign of grief or sadness or some shit like that. And then like some cultures like do it as a way of sadness too. Like, that whole thing about dyeing your hair or cutting your hair off. Like, that's why I believe Britney Spears was really going through some heinous shit when she cut her head bald. Like, they have a tight control over that woman. And it's not right. It's not right because of the way she's presenting. If she had the freedom to be herself and do the things she wants, she wouldn't be presenting the way she presents sometimes. Okay? So it's not, whatever they're doing to her is not right. So she cuts off her hair as a sign of grief, I'm assuming. And, she makes one last stop at the payphone. These are phones that were littered around town that you put little coins in and you can call whoever. That was the phone before the cell phone. Although even by this time, there were those giant cell phones and stuff like that. And then, East Asians already had, smartphones probably. Who knows? Because they always had better shit than us, technology-wise and shit. So anyways, she makes one more call to Keith, Blair Underwood, with his young, smooth chocolate skin. It was beautiful. And she just tells him thank you. He said he's happy she's alive. He was shocked. He was fucked up by the fact. But I think he still loved her and he saw her as a person and knew where she was coming from and all this other stuff. So he, So anyways, that was set it off. That was the end of the movie. She calls him, says thank you. And she drives on into the wilderness of Mexico to live her life and, harmony with nature and her red Jeep. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it just makes me sad to think that we could have been so far ahead by now. If they would just leave us the fuck alone and allow us to grow. We probably would have invented the flying cars and shit. We probably would. And it just feels like this movie reminds me of that. And that's why I don't like to watch it, because this isn't a mess because they're stupid. This is a mess because of lack of resources and institutionalized racism. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They was robbing banks. They was just doing shit because this is what our life is. It's chaos. So the next step of robbing a bank, that ain't shit. I saw my homeboy Tyreek shoot Lamar the other day in the face because, he stole his Lunchable. So, like, that's nothing to rob a bank. And it's just not fair. I'm upset now. Like, we don't deserve any of these things as a people. So, yes, that is set it off. I'm going to go talk to clients on these online platforms for therapy. Finish the rest of this nasty ass, what is it? Smoothie. And just, ruminate on what we could have been if the white people had just left Africa as a continent alone. Later days.